Okay, y'all, I am here getting ready to set up my AirCube system. Here is the brain controller that I'm going to be putting together. The reservoir is in here. And last, this is the box where all of the buckets and the fabric pots are in. So let's go ahead and tell a little bit about it. This is what the system looked like off the website, and it gives you it tells you there's an ebb and flow system, and it grows bigger roots due to air pruning. So here we go. Let's get started putting this together. If I started with the reservoir first, trying to put those stakes in the middle of it, and y'all, that's kind of a beast to do. It has some indentations at the bottom of it. I didn't know that at first, so finally I had to take my phone and look inside of it and feel around till I found them. And then it was so hard to get them lined up. And eventually I learned to just let it go through the top. You see where that little black donut looking ring is? If you actually go ahead and put it in the indentation and let it just slide through that donut ring, it's easier to stretch and secure it. But I'm not gonna force you all to watch this whole entire process. I'm actually gonna try to speed this piece up. Okay, here now I am taking the tubing out, and I am taking the brain controller out, and now it's time to put this piece together. And inside of y'all is more PVC pipes, 2 pumps, some grommets, some straight connectors, a whole host of things. But what I learned is the 2 pumps that's in there, one goes inside of the reservoir while the other one goes inside of the brain controller. And so the first thing I wanted to do was go ahead on and put the feet. They come with little suction cup feet, and I wanted to go ahead on and connect them to the bottom of each of the pumps. So I got those connected, and they wasn't easy to go on. Like, so far this whole setup with AirCube, it has not been an easy one, but I am one of those people that's kind of mechanically challenged. So, but I got them on there. And then I had to move the actual brain and reservoir itself to the actual space where I was going to be using it at, because it says once it fills up, you don't want to move it. And you have to measure that black tubing to fit to the bottom of the reservoir. So you want it to be already in the spot where you know you're going to have it set up. So here I am putting the pump at the bottom of the reservoir, and then putting the other pump at the bottom of the brain controller. At first I thought that the PVC pipe went through one of those holes at the top, but it didn't. I just quickly learned that it goes through like so at the top of the brain controller. But then I actually wound up having to move that. Those are the floaters that come to it. That come with it. And wherever those 2 floaters are, which are the white pieces of this, that's where the water fills. When it touched the top floater, the water would actually signal the machine to stop filling the brain controller with water. So I pulled them midways just to check. For starters, I can always adjust it. Then I put the pump down at the bottom of the brain controller. And then on the sides, you can plug both pumps into the actual machine. I was kind of confused on how it will drain the water out, and I really didn't understand the instructions there. So I had to really just sit down and just go line by line with it and put those grommets and straight connectors in as fast as I possibly, not as fast as I possibly could, as effectively as I could. Like, I really wanted to have the picture in my lap and go step by step, because I was afraid that if I would have connected something, I wouldn't have been able to get it loose. Okay, so on each side of the pump, I put the straight connectors. Now it was time to set up the buckets. I turned each bucket over and put a T connector in the middle of it. Now the next step is you have to measure the tubing. And you have to measure it from each bucket. And you want the tubing at the back 2 buckets to have like a U shape. So one of the things that I was trying to figure out in this moment was, how was I going to connect them, and did I have to cut each piece and connect? Because I really was kind of confused on it. The picture did not show The manual did not have a bottom view, but I do know those two, somehow or another, they're supposed to connect into those two connectors on each side that I'm showing there. And like I said, I am not one of those people that can look at things and just automatically tell how it goes. So I just sat there probably scratching my head for about 5 minutes. Then Eureka came to me, just go ahead on and cut them all the same size and make sure that the two at the very back have that U shape. And once I got them all connected to those T connectors, I turned them over. Then it was time for me to test out the machine. So I plugged it in and hit the manual fill on it. And I saw where it started to fill up with water. And I was so happy because I did not have water all over the floor. And all of my buckets was getting water in them. See, I was happy, and I tested every single bucket out to make sure that it was filling with water. So with that, I was like super satisfied because I was like, yay, I did it, and I did not make a humongous mess. Now the next part was to drain it, and so I hit the drain button on the timer, and I see where the drain button clicked on, and then I wanted to see, was it actually draining? So I looked at the tubing that I had connected from the brain reservoir that goes back into, the brain controller that goes back into the reservoir, and there it was draining the water from the controller back into the reservoir. So I was very happy about that too, because it seemed somehow or another I followed my way through this with multiple mistakes, but yet I did not end up with a tent full of water. And then when I looked at my buckets just to see if they were draining properly, they were. You could see the water actually moving out of the buckets. I don't think this video do it quite justice, but you can see where it was no longer like standing water inside of those ebb and flow systems, that the water was draining out of it effectively. One of the cool things about this system is you put your nutrient rich water inside of the system, y'all, and then it recirculates that water back into the reservoir. So it will, when you flood it, it'll flood those buckets with those fabric pots that I'm hanging up, that I'm showing. And when your plant is in there, it'll let the water sit for the 15 minutes, and then it'll drain it, all of the water off of it, and put it back into the reservoir. So you are just recirculating water. Here I had washed some LECA, because that is what these clay pebbles are, LECA clay pebbles, and that's what I'm going to be, that's the medium that I'm going to grow my plants in. So what I wanted to go ahead on and do is rinse them off, and you know that they are rinsed off because if you ever play with these clay pebbles, if they dirty, your whole hand will be dirty. So you do want to make sure that you thoroughly rinse them until your water is clean. Once you got whatever grow medium you're going to use ready, now it's time to put the the fabric pots down inside of the AirCube buckets. Now you can grow in soil, perlite, coconut coir, or whatever. You can do all of that. It is a misstep that I made. They do recommend soaking the bags with water to help them stay down inside of the buckets and not float up when the system floods. I did not see that, y'all, until after I had already done everything. And also they recommend not to fill the clay, if you're going to use the clay pebbles or whatever medium you're using, to fill them up outside of the green buckets. Don't do it in the system. Again, I did not read that until it was after, and that was in the troubleshooting part of it. It was not in the main written instructions. So now I'm just filling each bucket up with the LECA. Okay, and so this is now what it looks like once I got all of my medium in there. I got them all filled with clay pebbles. That back one is the only one that didn't have that much in them as the rest of them, but that's fine because the size of the plant that's gonna go there, I think it should be fine. And I can always wash off more clay balls, but I was not gonna go through that tedious process again. So now it is time for the fun part, and that's putting my plants inside of these buckets, and then we're gonna test out that drain system all over again, the flood and drain all over again. Okay, now it's time to set the timer, and it's on a 24-hour timer. So 24 hours is midnight pretty much. I have my lights in my grow tent to come on at 4 p.m. and cut off at 8 a.m. And so I want my plants to feed at least 3 times, which means flood and drain 3 times, because that is nutrient rich water, y'all, that I did put roughly 175 milliliters of AeroGarden nutrients in there just to start off simple, but I will change the nutrients on later down. So if you see here where I'm pointing, you see each pegged pin that I pulled up, that represents the time that I wanted to flood and drain. And so my times are 5 o'clock, which is 1700. Then again at 11 o'clock, which is 2300. And then again at 6 a.m. Okay. And what that means is at 5 o'clock, it is going to flood, and the roots will sit in their nutrient rich water for 15 minutes every time at 5, 11, and at 6 a.m. And this is what the system looks like once the plants are in and the lights are lowered. And I cannot wait to see how well these plants progress.